Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us once again. We are here and we are live. It is Urban Mission Conversations. And thank you so much for joining us. I know that we have had some really good conversations over the last 2 weeks. And I know that today is going to blow your mind as to what God is already doing in our communities and how we can partner up with him. But before we get to our topic and our conversation, again, we just want to welcome you on behalf of the Ontario Conference, who is putting on the series of conversations. And from our president, Dr. Mansfield Edwards, executive secretary, Pastor Yakov Babulovich, and also our trusted treasurer, Vereen Mikkel. We would like to just embrace each of you, whether you're watching it live or even if you are watching it on a rerun or later on this evening or later on this week. I know that you will be equally blessed. And so just again, these are urban conversations, urban mission conversations of what God is already doing. And we're just trying to put out what God is already doing so that we can partnership with him. But the first thing that I want you to do is just to make sure that you like, subscribe, and just share this feed with anyone, because I know that whoever is going to watch it will be blessed. So please go ahead and do that for us. And I'm going to go ahead and bring everybody. Well, before we bring everyone on, I just want to share with you an opportunity that is coming up for September 11th to the 13th. And it will be, oh, hey, we do have everyone on. How's it going, guys? But as they are there, it is an Urban Mission Convention that will be happening September 11 to 13. And it is free. It is free and it will be online. I know that you will be blessed, and we are inviting you to make sure that you do register at adventistontario.org. It's right there underneath. So please go ahead and do that so that you can be part of the conversation, learn, and again, equip yourselves with great tools of how to be a church, in our communities and what God really wants us to do. And so with that, I'm going to remove this. Hey, beautiful people. Great to have you on the screen with us. And we have a few panelists that are here. We're all hosts. We will be hosting this conversation. And so I'm going to ask the host to just go ahead and introduce yourself. Maybe we'll start with the furthest away, the man from the East, Pastor Matthew Feely. Go ahead, Matthew. Share a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm currently in Ottawa, where I pastor. I pastor at the Ottawa East Seventh-day Adventist Church. Originally, I'm from Toronto, Scarborough specifically. I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up as a young man in Scarborough, eventually became, troubled and involved in drugs and kind of different activity that wasn't positive for my life. But I was able to turn things around when I went to the Scarborough Church, and now I'm here as a pastor.
Awesome. Thank you. Great to have you with us. Liz?
Hi, everyone. My name is Liz. Currently, I've been a pastor for about 15 years and currently just serving as the co-director for family, singles, men, and women's ministries here at the Ontario Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I am so excited for this conversation because we get to talk to two special people who I really admire. And I'm really excited for you to meet my friend, Elliott.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us as well. My name is Orlando, and I'm the other to what Liz had mentioned in terms of being the director for family, men's, singles, and partially helping out with the women's as well. So glad that we are here to host this. Before we introduce our guests, here today, I'm just going to ask you, those who are watching, just go ahead and just type in where you are tuning in from, and just let us know which part of Ontario or even Canada you are tuning in from. And also, we would like for you to, if you have any questions during this presentation, during this conversation, please go ahead and just put that on, and we would be able to maybe ask our guest who is here those questions as we go on with the broadcast. So I'm going to hand it over to Liz.
Okay, awesome. So I get to introduce you to my friend. And Elliott Shin joined the Toronto City Mission in 1999 as an outreach worker in the Willow Tree community, which is where I met him. And he served as the director of outreach, providing volunteers and support workers like myself direction to the Toronto City Mission, mentoring interns and coordinating placement students. And in September 2019, he was appointed as the acting executive director. He is a husband and a father and a very good friend. And for as long as I've known him, anytime I've invited him to have a conversation with us, he's always said yes. And so, Elliott, thank you so much for hanging out today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for that intro. It was very kind of you. I'm actually quite excited to be with you. Over the past 5 or 6 months, I haven't had as many opportunities to share about the mission, obviously, because of COVID, and things are difficult for most churches and organizations to invite someone like me to come and share. So when I got this opportunity, I was quite excited. So I'm hoping that I can do a good job of representing the mission, telling you a bit about history, what we really believe and what we do. And after that, we can open up to any questions that you might have. It's hard to believe that I've known Liz for 15 years or so. Orlando and Matthew I met like 10 minutes ago. But I do remember Liz being a very, very conscientious and thoughtful volunteer in our Willow Tree community, which is, if you know Toronto at all, around the Yonge and Finch area. So since that time, obviously much has happened, and I'm more than happy to share with you some of the updates about the mission and where we've been and where we hope to go from here. So if you can be kind enough to give me about 5 to 6 minutes to share a few words, and then whatever questions you might have, I'm happy to answer.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay. So let me start with our mission statement. Toronto City Mission's mission statement is very simple. It's simply, through God's transformational power, we build loving relationships to bring hope to children and families impacted by poverty. Very simple. God's transformational power, through that, we hope to build loving relationships to bring hope to children and families impacted by poverty. Our statement is not, we want to get people out of poverty. It's, we want to transform people who live in poverty. So Toronto City Mission is our city's oldest and longest running outreach to people living in poverty. So the mission began in April of 1879. So that was this November we'll be celebrating 141 years of ministry.
Wow. Wow.
When you think about it, we're only 12 years younger than Canada itself. 1879. And for probably 70 to 80 years of that, the first 70 to 80 years, we were essentially a sort of immediate relief agency. And we owned a mission house in downtown Toronto on Spadina Avenue. And what would happen is, for years and years, people from all around the city would come to our house and receive things like food help, or depending on the time of the year, some winter coats or boots or gloves, or sort of things that they would need for everyday life. And sometimes we would offer them bus tokens or small amounts of money to help with some bills. And we would also offer the emotional and spiritual opportunities for them to share. So they would walk into the front of the door, pick up their things that they need, walk out the back, and they come back a month later. So we did that for a long time. And we always had, summer camps that we held for families at a place called Bronte, which is now our current day Oakville, Ontario. So we did that for a long time. And in around the late 90s, We had a new executive director that came and identified that there was a void in the work that we were doing in poverty relief and the transformation of our city in terms of those living in poverty. So at that time, around 1999, the decision was made to refocus on developing and transforming children, families, and communities rather than providing relief assistance. So instead of having people come to us on a weekly basis, we spent some time recognizing where in the city of Toronto where the need was, and we would go into those areas and build a community or a site. And that's the model that we are running right now. So at one point, we were in 6 communities in Toronto, and through some changes over the last few years, we are in 2 communities now, a place called Kingston Galloway, and the other place called Flemington Park. Our core values are of compassion, of relationships, of dignity and integrity. Compassion, relationships, dignity, and integrity. And we are an overtly Christ-centered organization. We believe that in every program that our participants enjoy, whether it's summer day camp or an after-school program or a tutoring program or it's an outing out of the city, sometime in that program time, the gospel will be shared. And we believe that to be the core of our existence. We believe in the ability to God to transform lives. And we do this through 3 different ways. One, we transform lives by building preventative programs. And I'll talk a little bit more about our programs a little bit later. Secondly, we believe in transformation of lives by building significant and important relationships. We want to be a presence, and we also want to partner with people to live their lives. And thirdly, we believe in transformation lives by building leaders. So we believe that whether you are a volunteer that lives in the city or you are a young person that lives in one of our communities, we believe that they can be a leader to transform their communities. Over the past couple of years, the mission has gone through significant change, brought on by some issues with leadership. And in the last year and a half or so, we have gone from 6 communities to 2. And just before COVID hit, we had many plans to increase our capacity in the spring, summer, and fall of 2020. So we're hoping that still in the last remaining few months of this year, we would be able to increase our capacity and live out some of the things we planned pre-COVID. Our staff live incarnationally. We want our staff to live as close to the communities that they serve in so that they're not just driven in weekly or daily and then leave, but they know the community, they understand the community that they're serving, so that as they say goodbye to a mom at an after-school program, perhaps later that evening or on the weekend, they could see the same mom shopping and be part of that community and to be engaged in that community. We believe strongly in long-term relationships. Our hope is that we can get a child in first grade and have them right through high school and even to their university, and as they become moms and dads themselves. We believe in the power of volunteers, and we spend quite a lot of time investing in volunteers and people that are interested in our ministry. So in each of our ministry sites, we have the same programs, but different in terms of as we respond to the felt needs of that particular community. So for example, in all of our outreach sites, we would have programs for children, for youths, for high school students, for moms, for dads, and we would have tutoring available for youths and students as well. Those would be in each of our communities, but how we execute those programs will be different based on the needs of that community. So for example, one community might be in our after-school programs, parents or kids might be more interested in music or dance. We will really focus on that. In other communities, there might be more of an emphasis on homework and school and those kind of things, and we'll have more emphasis on that. We also make sure we provide a March break day camp and summer day camps as well. And we want to get back to offering our families a summer holiday, a family camp over the summertime as well. The other program that I would like to talk to you about is a program called Role Model Moms. And that's in hiatus right now, but we hope to reboot that very soon. Role Model Moms is a program where we have been able to attract moms in our communities who did not finish high school. So they come to study in the mornings, and we offer free childcare for the parents and for the moms. And through those, it's Monday to Friday, and through that, we hope that they're able to attain their high school diploma, their GEDs, and through that to be able to go to college and to really transform their life and the life of their family as well. So that's a program called Role Model Moms that we really, really hope to reboot very soon. So I think I'll stop there in terms of sharing about TCM and answer whatever questions you might have. I do want to talk to you a little bit about our challenges in the future, but I think maybe that'll happen as questions are being answered.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And man, 100, you said 141,
Yes.
Huh? That is, wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. 141 years of ministry and just touching a lot of lives in the process. Now, one of the things that you have shared is that throughout the journey, starting off in Bronte, starting off in that and kind of moving along, you've kind of found your place now where it's focusing on families, especially with children. And so how important was it for you, and why was it that you why is it that you landed there? Because it seems like we have to be adaptive in this ministry.
Yeah. I think that the family part has always been a underlying focus of the mission, but over the last probably 15, 20 years, it's been a lot more, because we realized that if we take the kids and for programs, it's hard to avoid the moms or dads that drop off their kids. It's hard to avoid the moms and dads if the kid has, I don't know, maybe they had a hard day at an after-school program or a day camp. It's hard to not relate to the moms or dads to report those things, as well as it's hard not to share positive news about their kids to the parents. And as we began to meet the parents, it became evident that they had needs as well. So we wanted to reach out to them. So in some of our communities, we had a men's basketball program. We had a mom's Bible study, a coffee time, a morning mom's play time with the kids. So it just became a natural extension of the children's and youth programs, and it became simple that way. And as we developed and continued on with the family camps, it was easier to invite the whole family rather than just the youths. And we found that most of our families would not be able to afford a large or expensive holiday over the summer months, but to come out to camp for 3 nights, 4 days, or 4 nights, 5 days at a very reasonable cost. We had some wonderful times reaching out to families through those camps. And I still maintain relationships with families that I met probably 20 years ago. And to me, that's the value of camps, overnight camps, and how effective they are.
Yeah. I'm going to open it up. Guess, go ahead.
Elliott, I wanted to ask you a question about, you mentioned that you want your employees to live incarnationally in the community.
Right.
Do you find that difficult because Toronto's so expensive?
Yeah. So, for example, if we look at where you volunteered at Willow Tree, if you know Toronto at all, Willow Tree is nestled in the area of east of Yonge Street, south of Finch, and it's in the midst of a very, very affluent area. So it's very difficult for our staff to afford Willow Tree. So they would live a little bit, a quick bus ride or, maybe a bike ride away. Unless, of course, our staff are young enough to live with their folks, and that might be a little bit easier, right? But
yes.
We're not looking for staff that would live with their folks. But that's been an important element, because we have found that staff that live in the communities have had a quicker time learning about the families. There seems to be a bit more of a legitimacy with staff that live in families. I think the parents think, "Oh, you live here too." as they meet them at shopping or on the street on a weekend kind of thing, right? So we found that to be quite effective.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tried that as best as possible. Obviously, if we hire staff that lives a little further away, we're not going to force them to move somewhere.
Right. Okay.
Elliott, I wanted to ask, you used the word transformational.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if you could unpack that word and just help us to understand what it means in the context of your ministry.
Yeah, I think the simplest way that I could probably define that is how has God changed an individual or a family? We have found many examples of kids that have been extremely difficult because they're just either they have so much energy in them or they haven't learned at home to understand what is right and wrong in terms of being with other people. How through the teachings of our staff and through modeling of our volunteers have changed in that way. And in many ways, their behavior has been transformed. Through that, we hope that other areas like their schooling, the way they do homework, the way their attitudes towards school and studies would be transformed. Through that, we hope that their lives can be transformed through God's power. These are not things, transformation does not happen overnight. And that's why it's so important for us to get children as early as first grade. And it gives us many years to relate to them and to be with them, to build relationship with them. And, staff who have been here for 10, 12, 13 years, sometimes it's taking until after they leave to see the fruits of their labor, right? But we believe that's still transformation. And I don't think we would ever look at, boldly say we're transforming communities, but we're transforming people who live in those communities. And but that is twofold. One is through the efforts of our staff and volunteers, but it's also through the power of God and how God challenges us to do those kind of things.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. There are some questions that are coming in. One of them is coming in from Colin Humphrey. And the question is, what is your demographics? And so just with that, I just want to add a question to it as well. You have different branches within the city of Toronto.
Right.
And so we're talking to churches who may not understand or may not know what the needs are around their communities.
Right.
So as you were going along, as you were finding places to branch out into the community, how intentional were you guys when you look at your vision and your mission about families and children?
Very intentional. As we are at a time in our history where we want to add communities, we want to be incredibly intentional. And every community that we would go into that's new, we would do a full community assessment. Many of the tools that we have are things we learned from some things that World Vision has provided for us. For us, it's a little easier because the city of Toronto has demarcated certain areas of the city that they call priority neighborhoods. And if we are in one of those priority neighborhoods, we are within the reach of what we're looking for in terms of ministry. Now, that doesn't always happen, but we are almost to the point where we would look at communities that are Toronto public housing communities, which makes it easy. There's no question that we would be, if we go into one of those communities, we would be within the margins of people who live in poverty in our city. So the demographics of that is people who live in poverty, people who live under the homes of Toronto community housing. And in terms of the demographics of the people that we serve, it's kind of right across the board. In some communities, we have sort of salt and pepper, where it's a combination of folks in the Caribbean and the sort of, excuse my language, but white folks who families have lived in the cycle of poverty for a few generations. Mm-hmm. Some of our communities, we are very, the majority are from the Caribbean or from Africa. We do have a few Hispanics. So it's quite diverse. For example, in a community like Flemington Park, which is, if you know Toronto at all, it's right across from the Science Center. Flemington Park has been a landing point for new immigrants for generations, and there's a large Muslim community that we're trying to reach there. In terms of demographics, we're all over the board, but the common denominator of that is they would live in poverty of some sort.
Yeah. So to understand the neighborhoods, let's say a church was trying to figure out what the needs are. You're saying to use the statistics that are already available?
Yes. Yeah, they're readily available. The most recent ones are probably 3 or 4 years old, but I do think that the city or we are going to be doing a census pretty soon, so that would create a bit more information. But those are readily available through the City of Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Elliott, you were talking about how when you've got pockets of ministry programs, and they're usually the same, you said, in each hub. Is there anywhere or any neighborhood or community where you're like, we do this thing and it's only for this community? Do you have any initiatives that are very specific to community?
Yeah, the two communities where we do Role Model Moms, the program I was talking about, in those two communities, and those are at Jane Finch and in a place called Victoria Village, that would be the only program we do, would be Role Model Moms.
Wow.
And that is a powerful program.
Yes. So I guess there are more single moms in those communities? Or is it the education level that you...
I think that in any community that we have programs, there would be moms who would want to do that program. It just happened that we had found really good partners, and the area, when we did the community assessment, it was right for that kind of program.
Okay.
There were some girls' homes in one of the areas that we would have a natural partnership with. They would send their young moms to our programs. So those are some of the reasons why.
Okay. And so if you don't mind, can you just describe a little bit about that program? I mean, are you running it out of a church?
Yes. The Role Model Moms, when we were doing that program in Jane Finch, we were running it out of a place called the Emmanuel Church of the Nazarene, which is sort of southeast of Jane Finch, but still within Jane Finch. And then the other one in Victoria Village, we were running out of a place, East Toronto Chinese Baptist Church. And they gave us really nice facilities to run that program. So what happens is the moms would come in and that were interested. Sometimes they would be referred by a social worker who thought maybe this program would be helpful. And they would come and do an intake. So our teachers, we had hired qualified teachers, and the teachers would do an intake to see if they have the sort of lowest baseline to be able to, because we don't want people to fail. Right. Mm-hmm. So they would do a baseline, they would pass that baseline, and they would be registered. And they essentially had 3 cohorts to finish their 5 subjects to get their high school diploma. Okay. It was not often that a student would come for a semester and pass all 5 tests. So for example, let's say they pass 2 and they have 3 left. They'll come back for another cohort and they might pass 2 and they have 1 left. Normally, we found that most of our moms, math was the hard one to pass. Mm-hmm. So they might come back and do math again for a 3rd time and pass, and finally pass, right? We found that some of the younger moms who maybe had kids when they're 16, 17, and only been at the school for a couple of years, it was a lot easier for them to get back in the swing of things. And school, that program was not as difficult, and they tended to finish a little bit faster. But if you had a mom who'd been at a school for 20 years, right, it was a very hard transition, right?
Okay.
But it was an incredibly rewarding program where we really saw moms as they graduated. We actually offered them a real high school graduation ceremony as well, with the cap and gown and a dinner and stuff like that, and just wonderful to see those moms. Many of them go off to college and improve their chances in terms of getting better employment, things like that. And the other thing that they always said was now I can help my kids with homework as well. Now I understand the math or the English or the social science to help my kids with math as well.
That's amazing. Yeah. Is this something that ran in the evenings or during the day?
No, during the daytime, mornings, 9 to noon. And we had a separate childcare people we hired to do the childcare. Okay. It was easier for the moms because they're all in the same building. So if one of the child had a real hard time, then our staff would come down and ask the mom to come up for a second and things like that.
Okay.
that each of those classes quickly became a community on their own, where sometimes they would stay for extra help for homework, or once a week they would stay for lunch, and that's where we would do a gospel story or a gospel sharing of some sort from our staff. We would always have like a sort of a question of the day that would naturally talk maybe about faith things as well. So the focus of course was to get the moms the high school diploma, but we did want to somehow include the gospel component, and our staff being Christian model that in their life anyways, in terms of how they reacted to certain things and things like that.
Wow. Was it difficult to find churches to partner with to do that program?
The two churches we found, no, because they love the program. As I think, Liz, as you're learning about it, think it just the light bulb went on, right? Because I think that these are things that churches in the community would probably think about doing, and for them to be able to partner with us to do that was a great thing.
Amazing. And are you still looking for churches to partner?
No, we're not looking for churches. We're certainly looking for churches not to host, but to partner in terms of volunteer support or help with some fundraising and those kind of things. That would be ideal as well.
Okay.
We feel like we're going to start slowly and reboot just one of the role model moms, not both.
Okay.
So we'll see how that one goes, and then if things that goes well, then there will always be opportunities later on to open a second site.
Okay.
So I just want to jump in with this question, and then we'll have Matt share a question. But one of the questions is, does the programming have a preventative component to it? And I know that as part of what you do, you have a building preventative programs. What does that look like for the Toronto City Mission?
Yeah, like our programs are designed to equip our participants to make wise choices about school, about friends, relationships, about work and their future. Now, that's easier said than done, right? But really, it's the weekly meeting with them 2, 3, 4 times a week to model that. For example, for our youths, we have a program called TLC, which is Teens Leading Communities. Most people call it LITs, but we thought we'd be a little different and call it Teens Leading Communities. So we would focus on 4, 5, 6 youths that are grade 7, 8 in the community, and we would train them for a year and then hire them for a summer day camp the following summer, right? So this would be, rather than being paid a salary, they would get an honorarium every week. So this would be their sort of first paid job, where they have to write a resume, those kind of things. And we've had tremendous success in all of our communities in terms of our TLC program, and many of them have gone on to college and have done quite well for themselves, and many of them keep in touch with us as well. Yeah, I think that those are. But the key is. In all of our programs, whether it's the after-school program or a youth program or a junior youth program or a tutoring program, there's always modeling of behavior, to make choices. There's always those kind of opportunities to share. Yeah. Like we don't have anything like shop class where we teach kids how to fix an engine or those kind of very practical things. But it's really through teaching and having those kids apply what they're learning that we hope that we're being preventative.
Okay.
Elliott, you talked about in your ministry not taking people out of poverty, but like equipping them and empowering them as they live with poverty.
Right.
So can you just explain that concept to us and why you have that approach?
Yeah. I think we would be very unwise to try to make people rich. I think that we would be wise in trying to make people rich in spirit and in maturity and in integrity. And the other things, hopefully, if you teach people if you model and share how to be rich in those things, hopefully they'll succeed in life as they get older. We don't have a theory or a plan to help people out of poverty. We don't have that. We don't have any jobs that we offer them. We don't have any of those kind of things, because I think that would be very hard, and it would be unwise for us to say to people as they come to our programs, we're going to make you rich. But certainly we can make every effort to say to them, we can make you we can enrich you in areas of maturity and in your faith and your integrity and how you live your life.
Mm-hmm. As you talk about faith, and you talked a little bit about sharing the gospel with participants in your program, I feel like sometimes as a pastor that I've come across members who almost feel there's a dichotomy between the gospel and the social gospel, like, teaching and serving. Do you feel that they oppose each other? How do you strike the balance? And what would you say to somebody that really doesn't feel that the social gospel is essential?
Oh, that's a good question. We share the gospel of Jesus Christ. If I think things like the social gospel naturally are tentacles to sharing that gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't think that we would first share the social gospel, because I think that everyone needs the foundation of the gospel before you can do those other things, right? I think one of the most, how can I put it in nicely? One of the most empty feelings I would have is that if I would just do good things for the sake of doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like service comes out of our worship. Service comes out of our relationship with God, right? It's not I serve, therefore I'm going to have a relationship with God. I think it's the other way around, and I think that it's imperative for us to share the gospel, the truth of the gospel, and through that teach them that part of our life as people of faith is to do outreach.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really good question. I don't know if I'd have to think a little bit more about giving you a bit more of a detailed answer to that.
It was a really good answer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely a question that we all struggle with. A lot of people struggle with, but I think just being able to see how you are able to do it at Toronto City Mission and bringing that social aspect, but also implementing it through the gospel. And, like we talked about before, that transformational piece can really only happen when God is in there. So we truly appreciate that. There are, when it's very easy for us to kind of talk about what you do, the ministry, the logistics, the framework, the communities that you're impacting. But at some point towards the end, I will ask you to maybe share 2 stories, because I think that that's what brings it home for us.
Okay.
Just 2 important stories that, over the years, and you've been there since what, 99?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at some point, I want to ask you that, just to share those 2 stories, but
Sure.
We're not going to get there yet, just to get you thinking about it. But there's 2 questions that I want to put out to you. So as you know, a lot of churches don't have a lot of money, right?
Right.
And to do something like this in terms of ministry, how do you finance this? Is it strictly through the donations? Is it also strictly through the volunteers that come? Because churches have volunteers as well.
Yeah.
How can you put that maybe in a church context of how it could work?
Yeah. Let me answer the finance part first. We get, except for summertime, we get no government funding at all, and that's intentional, because getting government funding, there's some conditions of what we have to do and things like that, and that makes it a little bit difficult for us. We do get we do apply for the Canada Summer Jobs Program, where we can hire some university students to help us with day camp. But every other program is funded through donations from churches and individuals. And as I said before, one of the blessings that we face even through this COVID is that we have not seen a hit in terms of our support raising, in terms of being able to run our programs and things like that. Now, having said that, we're very careful how we spend money. We feel like we have to be accountable to the people that give, so we want to be very judicious in terms of how we spend. We do save a lot in terms of staffing, because all of our staff raise their faith support. So none of us are paid through the mission. We're paid through the money we raise. So that's helpful. But I think that the other question about local churches who don't have a lot of resources, how do they reach out? Let me work backwards on that. um, sometimes I feel like an organization like Toronto City Mission or other groups that work in the city, we actually might be a bit of a hindrance to the local church, because when Toronto City Mission comes into your neighborhood, you're thinking, oh, okay, that's good. They're doing that work. We don't have to do it.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
For example, the community that Liz volunteered in years ago, that was my first posting at Toronto City Mission way back in 1999. And when I went downstairs into the gallows of willow tree and some of the offices, I actually saw balls that were marked Church A. I actually saw sewing machines that were marked Church B. I saw other supplies that were marked various churches that were at one point in that community who served that community. But when Toronto City Mission came in, they left very quickly, right? And I often feel like, are we being a hindrance to the community, right? And that's why for us, one of the really important things that we have to have as we do community assessment to go to any new community is that we have to have local church buy-in. We have to have some churches in the area that would say, we will support you through prayer, through finances, through volunteers, we want to partner with you to do the work, because it shouldn't be just you, right? So I think that to answer your question, one would be, if you don't have a lot of resources, are there organizations in your city, in your area that are doing good work, and can you partner with them to offset some of the costs? But I think that it's not difficult, not expensive to invite people into the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have a potluck dinner to invite some people, if you do an after-school program, to reach out to the community and say, we have an after-school program and it's of no charge. We'll love it if you can come. You know, it's really using what is existing in the local church to best use it, not for yourself only, but to reach out to your neighbors in that church, right? If there is a Friday evening youth group or Thursday or Wednesday evening program, it doesn't cost anything to invite people into the church for those programs, and therein lies the beginning of a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and these things take time, right? These are not immediate kind of put in the microwave and it's ready to eat, right? It takes some time. It takes some investment, right? Not in terms of money, but maybe in terms of people and in terms of time.
Yep. Yep.
Elliott, if a congregation is motivated to begin this type of ministry, what is the first step for them to begin?
I think that they would need to look at the community and see legitimately, is this a need? Is this community around our church legitimately a needy community? And to talk to the people that live there to say, hey, we're thinking of doing some programs here. What would work for you?
Okay.
You know, would taking some of your kids to our church or whatnot for an after school program, would that be helpful? Would offering tutoring be helpful? Would offering the community help with some during income tax time? You know, like just a whole bunch of, look at the gifts that the people in the church have, right? Mm-hmm. And if there are a couple of accountants, beautiful. You know, can they invest a few Saturdays during the spring to help some people with some income tax, right? That's a bridge to a relationship right there, right? Yeah. To really engage with the community that you're looking at, and to I think most communities would have some sort of a community organization, like a community group, that would meet randomly. Maybe get into one of those meetings and share your ideas, right?
I know that you mentioned before that, you know, when COVID hit, some of your programs kind of had to take a backseat, or some of the things that you were planning. Yeah. What are you planning? Well,
we were planning to reboot our Willow Tree community in this summer, and that's delayed for a little bit. We were prepared to reboot a Role Model Moms this fall, and that's delayed a little bit. Mm-hmm. We just had some momentum in terms of we're hiring new staff because we had lost a lot of staff, and that had stopped because it's just really hard to hire staff when everyone's in quarantine. Right? Yes. But we just think of that as a bump in the road. We don't think that as a deal breaker that's going to stop anything. obviously for a long time we had to stop all of our programs.
Yes.
And we learned to do stuff online. We learned a whole new way of doing ministry. We had to do a bit of a laptop drive to get some laptops to families that didn't have one, so they can be part of our community. So children's, youth's, tutoring, our TLC leadership training was all done online. It had some glitches, and it takes a little getting used to. I mean, for the kids, it was like so novel that for the first little while they loved it, and then you get used to it, right? And then they don't show up, right? Like when they say they show up, right? So, some of those things were quite surprising. One of the things that one of our staff said is it really allowed us to cut off the fat in terms of the things that we don't need to do. We just focus on the things we really had to do, right? So it taught us how to do that, right? Which I think was very important. Yeah. So we're now at a point where we are doing hybrid. We're doing some online. We're doing some live in-person programs, very small groups, numbers, and we're now interviewing for some openings that we have on staff as well. So things are kind of getting back to normal.
I think a lot of churches are doing that. Taking kind of looking at their whole programming and seeing what is really important, which is great.
Right.
Trying to look, cut off all, like you said, cut off all the fat, cut off all whatever is unnecessary.
Yes.
And really put out there, what is the heart of God. And I think that that's a good thing for a lot of the churches.
Right.
Yeah.
Elliott, I wanted to ask you about downtown ministry. I know that you mentioned that Toronto City Mission had a ministry on Spadina at one point. It sounded like it was like a sort of like a drop-in center, or maybe not a drop-in center, but a place where people could find services or find get their felt needs met.
Yeah. So that would have been pre-1999 when we moved out to when we did the sites, the communities. Spadina just south of Bloor, we had a beautiful old house there. And people just came monthly. It was almost like going to the doctor. We had a file for you, and you came in the front door. They would give their name to us, and one of our staff would find their file and do a bit of a interview and see how they're doing. And we have a history of them, right? Like last month, their daughter was not feeling well, so we would ask about that, and they would get a requisition for food or clothing, and they'd walk out the back door. But we haven't done that in many, many years, like probably 20 years. We did have a ministry downtown in a place called St. Jamestown, which was sort of a Bloor and Sherbourne area. We were there for many, many years, and we had an incredible community of mostly Filipino immigrants that we were able to attract. And I learned so much about the Filipino community through that community. And because of loss of staffing, we had to close that site down as well. But we were there for a good number of years. Downtown.
The reason I wanted to ask you, Elliott, about the downtown ministry, also I just noticed Liz pointed out to me that there's a question for my wife, so I'll get in big trouble. I don't ask that question. But I wanted to ask about downtown. I have a passion for downtown ministry. Our church, right now we have a presence downtown, but I would venture to say we don't have too strong a presence downtown, and it's probably an area that we could target, and there has been discussions over the years. So I guess I wanted to pick your brain about doing ministry downtown and the challenges of doing ministry downtown. I worked for a few years with Yonge Street Mission, and I worked at Evergreen location at Gerrard and Yonge. And it's a drop-in center, and it was very popular, but they were essentially pushed off of Yonge Street because they're cleaning up Yonge Street because it's not good for the businesses, and they're now over on Spadina. But there's a big overhaul, and it just seems like it's such a challenging experience working downtown. And is that true? And could you offer any advice for a church that wants to do downtown ministry?
Yeah, I think that the downtown ministry, especially in a large city like Toronto, is a whole different ballgame than being in the suburbs, because you're looking at a whole and this I'm speaking at a area of that's not my expertise, because when you're looking at downtown ministry, it's, what we do is we don't have any homeless folks, which is an incredibly important ministry downtown. right? So you have groups like Sanctuary and other groups that are doing great work down there. For us, everyone has a home to live in. They're just living sort of paycheck to paycheck, and they're the urban poor that we minister to. So if you want to be downtown, there's lots of different, obviously there are working poor downtown too, right? And that's the community that we were serving in. But I think downtown is being downtown cities like Toronto is it's a different ballgame because it's not just homeless, but even the homeless could be divided into a women's ministry particularly, or a youth homeless, like when you were at Evergreen, or men, and those kind of things, right? I think being downtown makes things unless your church is situated right downtown, it makes things complicated. I know that I've seen examples of like Out of the Coal program here. I'm not sure if you have that in Ottawa, but that's an incredible ministry for people who are in the wintertime who are homeless, right? So it's really the idea of wanting to do something downtown is a wonderful idea, but you really have to narrow it down to what is it that specifically you guys want to do. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question well.
No, it's helpful, definitely. Thank you. And I'll just ask my wife's question. Sorry to take so much time. Okay. Christy wants to know, could you identify 2 or 3 of the most common areas of need in the communities you serve?
Okay. Yeah, common areas. The common is a tricky one. I could tell you a whole bunch of needs, but the common ones, I would say overall, every community we serve, there's a need for helping with homework, with school, tutoring, those kind of things. That's one. I would say the other commonality in all of our sites is, and this is something that's less, it's harder to grab, but I do think that there's just a lack of hope in the communities that we serve. Now that's a small word with a lot of implications, right? But I hope that just me saying that one of the common things that we see is that in all of our communities, people generally have a lack of hope. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the things that you had mentioned was in terms of the homelessness, that is not what you guys focus on. No. And I think it's very important, as I've read on your website over and over, is that Toronto City Mission identified a void.
Yes.
And so, as churches and church leaders and ministry leaders are watching this, I remember at one church we were trying to set up a food and clothing bank. Well, there were like 30 other churches, within a 5, doing the same thing. So how important is it to find that void, and how do you find that void among, being another ministry in the community?
Yeah, that's a good question. How we got to our position, I think, is a combination of intentionality and a little bit of luck. I think that we saw around us, without mentioning other organizations, because a lot of organizations here do wonderful work, but we tried to figure out what is it that we can do that others weren't doing. There are organizations that were doing amazing things with youths. There are other groups that are doing incredible things with children. There are other organizations that were doing great work with homeless folks, right? We didn't see anyone tackle the whole family. And that we thought, wow, that would be, I think let's look at that. But I do think that, again, and this might be the third time I'm saying it, these things don't happen overnight. It takes reflection, it takes some patience, it takes prayer, it takes wisdom and insight to be able to really, really hone in on something.
Yep. Encouraging churches to kind of wrestle with the whole thing. And, it may not be lucky, the way that Toronto City Mission was able to find that need, but it's definitely going to be a process to really find what those voids are. I know that we are coming to the end of the program. We only have a little bit of time left. Liz and Matt, do you guys have any other questions that you want to put in there? I'm actually excited to kind of listen to some of the stories, of the Toronto City Mission, as we bring this to a close. So, Matt, Liz.
Yeah, let's hear stories.
Yeah, the stories sound good. Yeah.
Tell us the stories, Elliott.
Okay. I feel a lot of pressure to give you awesome stories then. Let me give you two separate, and as I've tried to listen to you guys, I've been in back of my mind trying to think of a couple of stories. And mind you, I haven't actually done the actual outreach part in quite a few years. So I'll do a story that's quite old, that when I was an outreach person, and then more recently as I've been more of an overseer of things. So the first story is, I'll try not to mention names, but I was trying to tutor this one young gentleman who just couldn't do math. And I think he must have failed like twice. And I just thought he's never going to get it, right? And I just really tried my best to help him with that. Not that I was a great mathematician, but when you're away from high school math for a long time, it's easy to forget, right? And he finally passed math, and his mom invited me for a party, and I said, "What is the party for?" And it's for my son, because he finished high school. And looking at my own sort of immigrant Asian experience, I didn't understand why you would give a party for someone that finished high school. Because in my life growing up, in my context, that was the most obvious thing. You go to school, you go finish high school, you go to university, and even for university, they might not even throw you a party for your graduation from university, right? So I went, and the mom was so proud. There's quite a few people there, and as we were about halfway through dinner, the mom brought out like a cake of some sort, and she said that my son is now the first person in my family to ever finish high school.
Wow.
And I was floored, because I just thought, what a silly reason to have a party, right? And what a celebration. If you're the first person in anything, in any family, to accomplish anything, that's a party, right? And here was my attitude that, why is she doing this, right? And I think that really brought me to understand that I can't look at everyone in my optics. I have to look at the optics of the family and the people that we're ministering to. And I think God really taught me a real lesson of humility there. And since that time, I've tried, symbolically to kneel or tiptoe as much as I can to be in the optics of the person that I'm ministering to. And that really always stuck. There's a bit more to that, but that really always stuck. Yeah, the other story is much more equally uplifting, in that I was telling you about our TLC program, Teens Leading Communities, and a couple of summers ago, we actually hired as a summer intern one of our community kids who had been in our program since like grade 2. So this young girl came with her older sister to our programs, went through all of our after-school programs, went through our junior youth program, went through our youth program, got to university, had become a Christian, and had a strong enough faith that she would sacrifice her summer for a better paying job to apply for a summer internship, and was one of our summer interns. Now that's the long term, that's the 12 to 14 year ministry that's the investment that our staff and we have made in that young woman. But that's, to me, a wonderful story of that. There's lots of other parts in between, how she struggled and things like that. But the story is, she came to us as a second grader, very shy, went through all of our programs, and went through our TLC program, enjoyed the summer camp so much that the fall, as she got to university, the first summer she applied for a summer internship, and she came back a second summer to intern again. So that's maybe the second story I can share with you.
I love that. It just shows you that everything that you poured into her, was like this investment in her life.
Yeah.
And she came back to kind of give it back to her community.
Yeah. I really think it's the story of the farmer, where when you're in ministry, you might be the one planting the seed, and someone else might come by and do the hard work of watering that plant for a long time, and someone else might come by and be the benefits of the fruit.
Right.
But the other two people in that person's life was equally important to bearing fruit. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that. So even with the ministries that we have, we could be there just for that time in that moment.
Right.
And no doubt in the many years that you have been part of Toronto City Mission, you've had people come back to you, those
Right.
that grew up in the program, went off, did whatever, and now they're coming back, and just to see where they are, they can attribute to that part of their life.
Right.
And so, yeah, we just are in awe of what God does through us, and in this process that He sees the bigger picture, and we're only part of that bigger picture, you know, as we do ministry. Hey, we just want to thank you, Elliott. Matt may come on back. I'm not sure what happened, but we just want to thank you once again for jumping on with us and just having this conversation. Just one more question, and then we'll close it off for today. And the question is this: how important is it to network together between, you know, something like you as Toronto City Mission and also churches in the area, so that we're not doing things in isolation? I know that you had mentioned that, but that we, you know, that you are able to work together. How important is that for you guys, and how important is that for churches as well?
For us, it's super important. No matter who I meet, whether a pastor or someone that goes to random church, I make it a policy to make sure they understand what we do and who they are, because churches that are local, there's lots of opportunities to volunteer with us, but even churches that are in Ottawa, or we've had many churches from far away come in the summertime for a week for a mission trip to be with our summer day camps. And I think that through those partnerships, we get to share prayer requests, we get to share updates, we get to share not just the difficulties and the pain of ministry, but the joys of ministry as well. And I think that the partnership part is super important.
I agree.
Yeah.
Elliott, do you have any other partnership opportunities that you wanted to mention for churches right now?
No, right now, as I said, we are hoping to do some live programs in the fall, starting in September. So if people who live in Toronto are interested in a volunteer opportunity, feel free to contact us or other through our website would have all the information. Yeah, thank you. Or if you want to follow us on Facebook, Toronto City Mission, or Instagram, same Toronto City Mission, you'll get regular updates on what's going on. If you're further away, we would love to partner with you over summertime to bring a group of youths or adults to come and spend a week with us at a summer day camp. We don't offer housing, but if you can find a church in the area that you can stay at for a week and to do a week of summer day camp with us, we would love to have you. I think we've had teams from Ottawa before, and certainly we've had lots of teams from Toronto. We do get teams from the U.S. as well, so
cool.
Those are opportunities as well. But I like this idea of partnership and connectedness, and in our times we've been blessed with these social media platforms that are so important to us. And if you want to learn more about us, follow us on look at our website, our Facebook or Instagram pages, and that would have all the information. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, thank you so much for being with us. Just before we close, we will close off with a word of prayer. But just wanted to remind everyone, the Urban Mission Convention that is happening September 11 to 13, please make sure that you register, right? There are 2 tracks that we're looking at. One is in church and community transformation, and the other part of it is church planting. So creating missional communities in our urban centers. So we want to be able to see where God is really moving us and pushing us towards, as we come to this time and age where God is calling us to minister in the urban center. So please make sure AdventistOntario.org is where you register, and we really hope to see you at the convention. So I'm just going to give like 20 seconds. I know that's 20 seconds each for Liz and Matt, just to speak words of affirmation towards you, Elliott, and the ministry that you guys have there at the Toronto City Mission, and then we're going to close. So, Liz, you want to start?
Sure. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you for giving your whole life to the Toronto City Mission, because since 1999 till now, that's a long, long time. And I hope and I pray that you get to see some of those, that you get to harvest some of the seeds that you're planting, and that you can kind of see how much of a difference you have made in people's lives. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
So I just wanted to share with you from Revelation chapter 3 and verse 7 and 8. It says, "These things says he who is holy, he who is true, who has the key of David, who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name." I just want to encourage you and thank you for your works. And God knows your works all these years. Sometimes it's thankless. I had a small experience at Young Street Mission, and sometimes it's very challenging, this type of work. But God knows your works, and he will continue to open doors for you, and he will also close doors, the doors that need to be closed.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Liz if she can pray, but before she prays, again, I just want to thank you just for jumping on and just inspiring us with the work that you are doing. It is incarnational ministry. It's transforming not only lives, but also neighborhoods, and transforming communities and cities as well. And I think it's, what you have shared with us is what we always emphasize in God's mission, is that God is already at work. We just have to figure out what he's already doing and then partnership with him. And so, just want to affirm once again what you guys are doing there. And hopefully we can partner with you in some tangible way to help in this mission that God has called us to. So thank you so much.
Terrific. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and pray. God, you are so good. And we just thank you for this time that we can sit and listen and learn from Elliott and the team at Toronto City Mission, and the work that they've been doing over 100 years to reach out to the people living in Toronto and the surrounding neighborhoods. I pray a blessing over them, the programs that they currently have going, and the initiatives that they want to start. Lord, remove all the barriers, provide them everything they need financially, and as well as the manpower they need in order to continue this beautiful work that they have been doing. And I just pray, Lord, that in all things, that they would glorify your name. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. So I'm just going to ask the panelists just to wait up, just hang on there. But for everyone else, God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll catch you again next week with some more inspirational conversations about urban mission. God bless you all.
Bye.
Take care.